vote. And I believe we also have the responsibility. So the fact that you showed up here carries out the second part of voting in this country. And you're to be commended for that. I honestly thought we might have a bigger crowd because I think it's a really important election. But kudos to you for showing up. And then I also want to thank the candidates because stepping up to run takes some courage, and it's a public service, and it's all about community and less about the candidate in some respects. And so we just want to thank you for stepping up to the plate for that. We do want to ask people, and we always mention this at each forum, that we just request that both the audience and the candidates treat each other with respect and with civility. I know that people get really passionate about issues and they have really strong feelings, but especially in rural communities, we are all neighbors, friends, relatives, and when all the dust of politics settles, we are still those things. So we just ask that everyone treat others with respect. And then I'm just going to make a really quick plug for the League of Women Voters. We are a nonpartisan, issues-based organization. We never endorse or back candidates. It's all about issues. And that is one of the reasons why we host these forums, because we're an impartial group. And we are also a nonprofit group. And our main goal is community service, to provide education about voting, provide voter education about the candidates so that you're able to make the best choice you can possibly make when you go in to cast your ballot. So with that said, I'm going to turn this over to Mike Miller, who is the Vice President of the League of Women Voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I'm going to add a couple of thank yous to start with. I want to thank the Ottumwa City Hall for making this room available for us, and for also live streaming this to the Ottumwa City Hall YouTube channel, so that folks who aren't with us tonight still have a chance to be able to see what happened here and hear the candidates' position on certain issues. My role tonight is to really kind of set the ground rules for how the forum is going to unfold. Mary did mention that we are wanting to make sure we encourage a culture of civility. So if you would please, if you have not yet, silence your cell phones so that they're not going off during the forum tonight. We'll start tonight with 2-minute opening statements for the candidates to have an open forum to let you know where they stand on certain issues. After those opening statements, we're going to take questions that have been given to us from the live audience here. As you came in tonight, you were probably offered a note card where you could write a question down. And we're going to try to make it through as many of those questions as we can in the next hour or so. At the very end of the forum tonight, there will be a time for 1-minute closing statements. And then next week, we'll have another forum that we'll probably talk about at the very end of our forum tonight. So with our ground rules in place, I think we're going to start with opening statements. And then Brenda Case will be a member of League who will read those questions that you provided to us. So thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you again to League of Women Voters and City Hall for providing a non-biased event to educate the voters on our candidates. I'd first like to make a plug for Mark Peters. He could not attend tonight. He is attending a pre-engaged event in Indian Hills, raising money for scholarships at their celebrity night. So unfortunately, he was unable to attend tonight. Again, my name is Wes Crowder. I'm running for city council in this coming election. And the reason I'm running is because I feel like all of us have watched the Ottumwa that we know and love slowly fade and slip away over the last 4 years, especially, and even over the last decade or two. We've seen little glimpses remain of the town we know, but there's large holes here and there in the picture. And we have lingering construction, we have drawn out construction, we have, lots of different things that are slipping away from what we know. And I think that the administration and the council of Ottumwa needs to get back to the basics and take care of what we have and stop borrowing and spending money that we don't have. I would appreciate your support and your vote for Wes Crowder on November 5th. Thank you.
Yes. Also, I would like to thank the Women's League and the media. I'd also like to thank J.R. Richards for having put his name in to attempt this. And like in any situation, you have votes and someone is on the short side. But I do appreciate the fact that JR was willing to get involved too. I'm Bob Myers. I would appreciate your vote on November 5th. I've done this before. I'm going to change some of my comments because some of you heard us a couple of weeks ago, and I need to respond to some of the comments that Wes made. And naturally, since I was on the council for 12 years, I'm probably a little bit defensive. But you know, 2 weeks ago, the city of Ottumwa had an Oktoberfest presentation. And one of the reasons I chose to get back into this running for the city council is I've always been so impressed by the volunteers that step up in Ottumwa and do things. And so just 2 weeks ago, Oktoberfest, the Rotary Club did the chicken dinner that is just outstanding and it just fantastic the way that people volunteer throughout the whole day. Later that week, we had people with the Oktoberfest committee that served over at Jimmy Jones weekly, nightly, and just all kinds of volunteers. And then the chamber put on the parade on Saturday. Again, that just, if you were near, thousands of people enjoyed. So there are a lot of positive things that go on in this town. Some of us were at a meeting a week ago, Monday, at Bridgeview, and it was on budgeting and finance. And it was pointed out that Ottumwa really does pretty well with the lack of valuations and the limited amount of funds that we have to work with. And hopefully I can come back to that later.
Thank you to the league for putting this on. Thank you to the citizens of Ottumwa for watching tonight. My name's Mark Rowe. You're going to hear a lot tonight about the word change. There are two very clear paths that the citizens of Ottumwa can take on November 5th. I really want to be clear on this. I refuse to subscribe to the thought that we just need to roll over and accept that Ottumwa is just a small river town and we need to accept who we are. That's not what we do. Our citizens have worked their entire lives to become something better, to give more to their children than just what will help them survive and maintain a status quo that they've had for the last 40 or 50 years. They didn't just give up and say, oh, well, this is who we are. Why try to make things better? They didn't do it, and it would be an atrocity for us as city leadership to do the same thing. That mantra of change is completely unacceptable. We've built the last 4 years on change that pushes our city into the future, building a sustainable path to success. We've put it into place and are moving the needle forward in public safety, economic prosperity, housing availability, and cultural diversity. We have seen change that other communities in Iowa are looking to Ottumwa to model in the way that they change their communities. We've created change in our approach. We don't any longer use obstinate, deceitful, and hateful language to force resistance that does nothing more than stifle us as a community. We use data for professional decision-making. We listen. We don't make decisions based on our personal opinions, but rather facts. I'm a candidate who wants to continue positive change, who doesn't minimize our people and town's potential, and have and will work to make sure that we have a safe and prosperous community going into the future. I want to respect our past. I want to be very clear about that. I want to respect our past and everything that this community has accomplished, but I want to take that past and build on a future, not try to live in that past. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm glad you all came. I'm Brenda Case. I will read the questions out twice, and then I'll mention who submitted the questions. We have a few duplicates, so I'll mention everyone's name and then summarize the question. If you'd like me to repeat one at any time, just sing out and I'll be happy to do so. Our first question is from Mindy Young. In regard to street projects, should we continue to rely on road use tax and local option sales tax revenue, or fund more street projects through the general fund? In regard to street projects, should we continue to rely on road use tax and local option sales tax or fund more street projects through the general fund?
Okay, really good question. When I mentioned that some of us were at Bridgeview at a budget and finance meeting just 2 weeks ago, that was one of the big issues was the limiting factors that are in the general budget. So then when it comes back to, okay, road use, local option sales tax, we are limited. Again, what I'm proud about this city is we have put $2 to $3 million in street repair for the last several years in a row. And so could we take it out of general fund? Well, you could if you ended up wanting to cut down on safety, which would be police, fire, or some of the other issues that are covered in the general fund. So I think we've got people that are really working on grants and everything that we can, but we have accomplished a lot in streets.
I think that would be a disaster to do, quite honestly. We get so preoccupied by, we need to do more with roads. We need to do more with roads. We had a presentation just Tuesday night. The city of Ottumwa so far has spent $68 million in road construction over the past few years. That's not a small amount. And to Bob's point, we have to maintain a minimum coverage ratio by state rule. And if we don't do that, then we lose our credit rating and we become liable to pay more. Public safety is about 85% of that general fund budget. We could pull money out for roads, sure we could, but then we have to compromise that public safety, health insurance for our employees, general liability insurance for the community. Those are things that we shouldn't and can't compromise just to do a couple more roads.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I think it's very dangerous to try to do anything more or extra with the general fund because you're taking away from public safety service fees, you're taking away from the administration fees, you're taking away from police, infrastructure, anything that's going to help the community. That is all determined by the general fund. So to use that money for road construction, anything like that would be very dangerous. I think that better allocation of the funds we get at the federal and state level for street repairs would be more wise. I think trying to not overextend in how we do our construction and what we're doing with those projects would be wise, and it would help to make the money that we are getting go a little further. Thank you.
The next question from Tori Young. Should the city utilize taxpayer funds for projects if there are major grants available that would otherwise make the project attainable? One more time. Should the city utilize taxpayer funds for projects if there are major grants available that would otherwise make the project attainable?
Okay. So I look at this much as if you had a project for your own private home, would somebody willingly turn down $85,000 to do $100,000 worth of improvements to their house? The very short and simple answer to that is no. It's very important for us to take advantage of those opportunities so we can get the most push for our dollar as a taxpayer to do projects that would otherwise not be possible. I use the Main Street Ottumwa projects as a prime example. There is no way that the city tax dollars could have done those projects without having those grant funds available. And another great example is the airport. We got a 6,001 foot runway for virtually pennies on the dollar because we were able to utilize that. Did we have to buy in as a city? Absolutely. But there's no way we would have been able to push forward on that project without those grant funds.
Can you repeat that question again, please?
Yes. Should the city utilize taxpayer funds for projects if there are major grants available that would otherwise make the project attainable?
If we didn't match it, or we didn't take advantage of it, we would have been a new project.
Basically, should we use grant money first before counting on taxpayer funds?
Wait, I don't think that's his question.
Okay. I think it's really not fair to the other candidates who've already answered if we
okay.
reword the question.
Okay.
Would you like me to repeat it?
No, the way you've worded it, then I'm going to say no. We,
Grants would make things unattainable?
Yeah. Like if we didn't get the grant.
Okay, we didn't say we didn't get the grant. We said,
Otherwise unattainable.
okay. So the way I understand it is, should we use taxpayer funds for projects that could otherwise be used as grant money? No, I don't think we should. I think we should, at the very least, take a very long, hard, serious look at those projects before we commit taxpayer money, especially when there's grant money available. But I would add to that I think we need to be extremely careful about using grant money and legacy funding as an excuse to tack on extra taxpayer money that we don't have. Our base is really thin as it is. We have a very stretched out footprint, and I think that's a very dangerous game to play.
Yes, I think I understand both questions, so we'll see what I can do with it. But I agree with both of the fellows. You do have to be careful. Obviously, if you could get grant money to do the project, go for it and get it. But it does concern me sometimes that grant money is tied to, as Wes said, what we could do locally to put in and match it. And so sometimes the projects end up costing twice as much. I'll use the term pervious brick. It might be a great idea. Ecologically, it's really good and everything. But then later you find out it takes money to maintain it every year. So you have to weigh those types of considerations. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it's a consideration. As Mr. Rowe pointed out, and I was going to use that on when I first heard the question, the airport, we got grants, 85% of the airport runway, total reconstruction. Pardon? Your time. Oh. Was paid by federal money.
Reminder, we just have 1 minute for the answers to the questions where we had the 2-minute summations. The next question is from Christy Myers. What personal accomplishment are you most proud of? What personal accomplishment are you most proud of?
That's easy. That's my marriage. I've been married to my wife for 13 years. Quite frankly, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have an education. I probably wouldn't have the career that I have, and I definitely wouldn't have the family that I have. So that's it.
Yes, and I better be careful with this one, right, Christy? Christy and I were talking yesterday, driving back to Ottumwa, and we both feel so blessed that our lives, of course, meeting each other, marrying, family, but we both went into education right away, and there isn't any more rewarding profession than what we've done with our lives, and so I think just the total package, we're very, very happy and feel very fulfilled.
That's a tough question. There's a lot to be thankful for. There's a lot that I've been able to take part in that I've been really happy with. I hate to narrow that down to any one thing. I would say that I'm most proud of the fact that I have chosen a career path that allows me to help people And that has translated over into my personal life, where I've been able to dedicate my free time to helping those people that don't necessarily have a voice for themselves, and I have the ability to advocate for them and be part of organizations that do the same.
The next question is from Mike Lapointe. If you are elected, what will you do to lower taxes? And do you believe our taxes are too high now? Again, if you are elected, what will you do to lower taxes? And do you believe our taxes are too high now?
Okay. In the last forum, Wes mentioned, in fact, that I was on the council that raised taxes and how terrible that was. I think that's the biggest issue that we in Ottumwa face is high taxes. However, as I said about this meeting last week, 2 weeks ago, our property valuations in Ottumwa is like the third lowest in the state. So when you stop and think that for whatever reasons, we haven't been able to increase the population, we haven't been able to get large industry in to bring more jobs in, we've really done a pretty good job of at least trying to maintain the safety components, the streets you're talking about and everything else, with one of the lowest valuations of property in the state. But yes, I would work hard to lower them if there were ways to do it.
I don't think that anybody that's a taxpayer wants to see their taxes any higher. So the answer to the first part of that question is yes, I'd absolutely love to see lower taxes. Do I believe that they're too high right now? I do believe that we have high tax rates, and I would love to find the solutions. The solutions are actually quite easy. In theory, we have more tax-paying citizens that are spreading the tax burden in our community. Unfortunately, at this point in time, until we can get the new jobs in, get the new housing developments in, this is where we are. And the only way to reduce that is to, quite frankly, going back to one of the first questions, we could reduce public safety, and that could reduce our tax burden. We could eliminate health insurance for people. That would reduce our tax burden, but we've got to work with what we have, as former Councilman Myers said.
I absolutely think our taxes are too high, and I would absolutely do everything in my power to keep them or lower them, especially from where they're at now. And I can even tell you, right now the national average is $121 per 10,000. The state of Iowa is 147, Wapello County is 166, and the city of Ottumwa is 219. I think that speaks volumes to the way that we've tried to force growth and economic development. We've overextended on projects. We've spent money that we don't have. That's why I want to get back to the basics and take care of what we already have and not try to continue to spend borrowed money. We're borrowing money away from these civil infrastructures and civil service programs, and then we're taking bond money from projects that we're trying to spur economic growth with, and we're trying to compensate for what we've already robbed Peter for. So there's a pretty simple solution, and it's to stop spending money we don't have.
There are 3 questions that are very, very similar. I'm going to combine 2 of them. From Pam Crowder and Chris Crowder. What are your thoughts about Ottumwa's current ordinance banning pit bulls? And are you in favor of lifting that ban on pit bulls in the city of Ottumwa? Shall I repeat? What are your thoughts about Ottumwa's current ordinance banning pit bulls? And are you in favor of lifting that ban on pit bulls within the city limits of Ottumwa?
I personally don't believe in breed-specific legislation. However, I also know that there's a reason that breed-specific legislation was put into place in Ottumwa. And there are several communities in the state of Iowa, there are several communities across the country, and there are several nations across the world that have that ban. Would I be in favor of looking at a lifting of that ban? Absolutely. I think there should be research done for that. But much as I would say on any decision without solid research, I would probably not vote in favor of that.
I'm absolutely against a breed-specific ban. I think it's weird because the Humane Society of the United States just recently put out some offerings to open invitations for all Iowa communities for better education and to adopt a newer, safer set of ordinances that would be specific to animal behavior and not breeder identification. So that's one more area of a way that we could not limit the citizens of Ottumwa. There's a lot of people, I think, that live outside the city that would have otherwise chose to live inside the city if they could have maybe paid a higher licensing fee or something for a potentially dangerous animal and not a dangerous animal. So there again, that's one simple way that we could adopt to increase tax base.
Yeah, that is such a tough issue, I think. And I know Sioux City apparently has changed their ordinance. They're going to allow it. Des Moines was talking about today that they're going to investigate. I think, as Mr. Rose said, when Ottumwa was asked, it was like, well, we'll take a look at it. I happened to been teaching at Dama when the little girl was viciously killed by a pit bull. And you talk about an issue that really stirred the community. Then the outcry was, we need the ordinance. Since that time, then I recall a situation or two where we had some restrictions on not a special breed type, but the first time if a dog would bite, the second time, the third time it would be banished. And there were always good reasons why we should always look the other way or allow something. So at this time, I would not be in favor of removing that. But like Mark said, I think it should be open for discussion.
The next question is from Sandy Rogers. Why isn't the city doing more to bring industry and good, steady jobs to the community? Why isn't the city doing more to bring industry and good, steady jobs to the community?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I can't answer why the city's not doing that. They absolutely should be doing that. That's probably the number one goal for increasing tax base, increasing economic growth, increasing population, increasing positive attitude towards the city. You know, we have, I'm guessing, north of 250,000 square foot of retail space that could be used for any number of industry or retail businesses. We have plenty of growth area out north by the airport that we're not utilizing. We have Ottumwa Job Corps that brings kids in of all different demographics and all over the region, and we teach them skills for life skills and jobs, and then we let them move away. We don't do anything to retain them. We have #1 rated junior college in the nation right here in Ottumwa, Iowa. We bring them in, we train them, we let them go. We should be doing more to work with those educators and work with those recruiters and keep them here in town by offering and supporting businesses and industries.
Okay, yes, and I kind of anticipated this question might come up too, because it's a real concern. But in my past 12 years on the council, it was always a concern. It was always an attempt. How can we get industry in? Bondurant, many of you know, last week announced a 1,200 job facility coming in. It's kind of like, well, why can't we get that in Ottumwa? Well, we talked about the tax rate is high here. There are other, when I first came to Ottumwa, there were 5 railroads that came through. But anyway, we are continually trying. I know we've missed out on a couple of things just recently. And like Bondurant, if we finally get to one, then boy, that's great. I'm glad you did something, but it's hard because of the walkies, the Ottunas, and the places that can offer incentives for people to come in.
I would like to change the wording of that question just a little bit to fit what I'm about to say. It's not that we have been trying to get industry in this community. We have gotten industry in this community. Is it 2,000 jobs? Absolutely not. Over to the try. We just, this Tuesday night, heard a very long presentation at the city council, a 2-year, almost a 2-year study on the waterworks facility so we could get wet industry here in Ottumwa. We have the Helgerson Flats project out at the airport that we have available land now. That's site certified land. We're one of very few areas in the state that has this. We have the airport expansion to bring in industry. We just got Plastipac a year or so ago. And on top of all of that, we have retention efforts to keep the business here that's already here. So it isn't that we've just tried to do things, we have done things.
The next question is from Mike Rogers. How can the city justify a Bridgeview Hotel and proposed riverfront deal when our surface streets have been neglected, even ignored for 20 to 30 years, while the city continues to collect such high property taxes? How can the city justify a Bridgeview Hotel and proposed riverfront deal when our surface streets have been neglected, even ignored for 20 to 30 years, while the city continues to collect such high property taxes?
Okay, and that's again an excellent question, and I don't think there's a simple answer. I think it is hard to justify both of those items, but on the other hand, if you do nothing, you get nothing. I've heard forever that we would have more conventions coming to Bridgeview, which would be bringing income in, bringing people to restaurants and other facets of the town, if we just had a hotel on site. And they've got figures that suggest that could be the case. The same thing with the riverfront. I think it's Charles City, Iowa. There are other river areas that with development, it spurred other kinds of development. So it does worry me that if you do nothing, you get nothing. But at the same time, if you go out too far, how do you justify spending that money?
I think it's really important that we remember nothing's a done deal yet. We haven't made any solid votes to commit any money to the Bridgeview Hotel. Riverfront is just a concept at this point. There's nothing that's been committed for that. So, you know, should we talk about those things? To echo Mr. Myers, you know, we need to listen to every option that's on the table. Sometimes those are good options, sometimes those are not good options, but we need to listen to all the options regardless. And I would like to reiterate one more time, we have not ignored city streets for the last 10, 20 years. $68 million. This was a number that was put out Tuesday night at the council meeting. $68 million is how much we've spent to date on road reconstruction in this community.
I think as a taxpayer and somebody that's not been a part of the council or administration at any time in the past, it's an absolute concern because we have the beach Ottumwa that was forced. It wasn't voted on. We have Bridgeview now that was forced. It wasn't voted on. We have a streetscape project that was forced. It wasn't voted on. I think if these people that have a history and experience think that everything that they're doing is so fantastic and great for the community, why don't they want to put it up for a vote and see what really happens? I think some of their decision making's not that it's necessarily incorrect, but I think they're basing their decisions on a very small percentage of voter opinion. So it's very important that everybody get out and vote. If they don't like these things that we're talking about and they want to see something different, they should definitely get out and try to vote for different and change.
This question is proposed by the League of Women Voters, and then we'll move to cards where people have submitted more than one question. What would be your first project if elected to City Council? Do you have an initiative that is important to you personally? What would be your first project if elected to City Council? Do you have an initiative that is important to you personally?
I said this when I ran for office the first time. I will say it again tonight. I don't have an agenda. My agenda is to further the community, and that's really it. I believe in economic development. I believe in housing development. I believe in the equal treatment of all of our citizens. So that is what I believe in. I do want to take one moment to point something out here, because I think it's a fallacy for us to sit and listen to somebody say that we are not voting on issues. That is absolutely incorrect. Everything that is voted on in public. Nothing gets passed. It would be absolutely illegal for us to spend money that has not been voted on.
Well, first of all, I didn't mean the council vote. I meant public vote. I figured that would be obvious, but I apologize for that misclarification. First and foremost and continually, it would be open, honest, transparent communication. I think the taxpayers and the public deserve that. I don't think they're getting it now. I think that it would be a number one priority of mine to eliminate conflict of interest positions, such as pro tem mayor and pro tem city administrator right now. City attorney, HR, same person. That's costing the city over $600,000 in outside legal fees in the last several years. There's a lot of conflict of interest right now in this administration that needs to be addressed. Outside of that, it would just be open and honest.
Yes, I actually have broken that down, and I'm going to look at it in 4 ways. If elected, I want to make sure that we're working from a solid budget, so that when special interests come up during the year and they have an idea, okay, if we can fit it into a solid budget, do it. Secondly, I think city goals and plans. I think the citizens need to know, because we have the goals, we make plans, but do we report back to you so you know how we're doing with those plans? The third one would be consistent and fair. I think there's that perception out there that are we sometimes, and I think whatever the issue, whatever our ordinances, are we consistent? Are we fair? And then make sure that the public realizes we're serving the entire city, not special interests. And that's all one big thing, but that's what I would hope to work as a team on the council.
From Christy Myers, what experiences do you have that have prepared you for being a city council member? What experiences do you have that have prepared you for being a city council member?
From a municipal standpoint, I do not, and I'm not ashamed of that. From a professional standpoint, I've spent over 20 years being parts of members of different teams, organizing, leading, improving, continuous improvement, safety organization. I've always had a career that's forced me to be a part of a team and to move forward in a safe and consistent manner. So I don't see that being a problem trying to be on a council.
I think one of the main things is I always try to be a positive voice for the council, for the city. Again, it may go back to having been fortunate to be an educator here for 40 years, but as well as teaching, I served on the Ottumwa Education Association in many leadership capacities, president of the association several times, negotiations chair, grievance chair, those types of things. And so again, earlier in my early statement, I mentioned volunteers. Well, even in those capacities as an educator, you learn to work with people. You learn to listen to both sides. And so I think that's an asset that I have in trying to be a council person.
First off, I have over 20 years of experience in the professional world as an accountant, and in that 20 years, I've gained experience as a executive leader in the organization in which I've worked. I've been an educator at the local college. So I think that first and foremost is the knowledge and the experience that I rely on. I have board experience in that, legislative experience, over 10 years of public service experience. So I think that all of that is what positions me to be a good fit for this position.
From Pam Crowder, how would you vote if an amendment or abolishment of the breed-specific ban came to the council? How would you vote if an amendment or abolishment of the breed-specific ban came to the council?
Okay, and I can't say how I would vote at this time. As I said in my previous answer, I will listen to both sides. I will listen to all the information. Mr. Crowder here mentioned earlier, my first year on the council, I came in with this too. We should have more referendums. We should let the citizens vote more often. And then I came to the realization, wait a minute, if you elect me for some of the things that you think I stand for, and therefore in a republic, instead of always being able to go to a vote, which takes time, you're counting on me to make the decision. So that's what I would do in this situation. I would get as much information as I possibly could, try to get the pulse of what the majority of the citizens are saying, and then I would represent them with my vote.
When I first came into this position 3 years and 10 months ago, one of the very first things that I did as a council person, I personally helped rewrite the animal ordinance for the city of Ottumwa to help promote better animal rights. So this is a very near and dear subject to me. That being said, though, again, I would reiterate that I would have to see studies, definitive studies, and definitive history to back any vote that I made.
I think on this particular issue, I would not hesitate to vote to abolish the breed-specific ban. It's just it's almost like a discrimination to that breed. There's a lot of breeds that potentially could be dangerous. It's all in the wording, whether they're dangerous or potentially dangerous. Right now, potentially dangerous is okay inside the city limits of Ottumwa. Dangerous is not. So who are we to say or define what is potentially and what is not potentially? I think it's just a limiting factor that we shouldn't have right now. And with my last little bit of time, I would like to clarify my opponent here. In a democracy, you vote for leadership and then you take what they say. In a republic, it's for the people, by the people, and of the people. You're elected by a democratic process, and then you still take what the public wants to do, not what you want to do.
I want to try one question one more time because I didn't entirely faithfully reproduce it. So we'll have one more go at Tori Young's question. Should the city utilize taxpayer funds for projects if there are major grants awarded that would otherwise make the project unattainable? One more time. Should the city utilize taxpayer funds for projects if there are major grants awarded that would otherwise make the project unattainable?
Well, I think that I heard it right the first time, so I probably won't deviate much from my original answer, but I will expand to say, we as a community have been very lucky to receive funding for projects that, while yes, we have had to invest taxpayer money into that, and yes, there will be an interest component to that, the gains that we see as a community from that are going to far outweigh the interest payments on those. A great example of that is downtown. And I know I said this at the last forum. 10 years ago, Ottumwa's downtown was virtually dead. We exploited the grants that were given to us, and now we have businesses downtown that are thriving. We have an entire second level of housing that is almost full. So use of grants and matching those grants are something that's absolute that we need to look at every time they come available.
I think it's definitely project specific, should be looked at from every different perspective when you're talking about taxpayer money versus grant money. But again, I don't think that we should use grant money as an excuse to overextend our taxpayer spending. I mean, it's great that we have grant money, and it's a fantastic thing to move forward with economic growth projects like downtown, but we should not overextend just because we have the backing of a grant or a fund or a legacy foundation. Market on Main is a pretty darn good example of why we shouldn't do calculated risks, because it's for sale right now. Anybody could buy it for any reason. I think that's a great example of a calculated risk that we should not have taken. So, and it's also a great example of a project that used grant money and taxpayer money as well, and also borrowed money from the county. So there's lots of different ways to look at these things, but when you're talking about taxpayer money, it needs to be looked at very seriously.
Yeah, and I, like Mr. Rowe, I think we've kind of answered that earlier. I think, yes, that if you have grants available, you better take a look at it. I was watching the council meeting last month, and I think Brad Grief pointed out he applied for a grant last year for the city and did not receive it. And the question came back, well, it was a pretty good grant. Why didn't we get it? Because the city didn't have any investment in it. So this time they came back and asked for the city to at least. And then I want to go back to, again, I think Mr. Crowder's wrong. Market on Main was never meant to be operated by the city or by legacy or anything else. It was built. And if you remember what that corner looked like before, but then another positive, another one would be the J.C. Penney building that now is a functional business. Had the city and legacy not gotten involved and made it attractive, we wouldn't have had a business there.
I was not sleeping. We have one more question from Patty Galvan Ramos. One of the city council's goals is to learn and listen to community members' concerns or ideas. What have you done or plan to do to learn, listen to new Ottumwans, specifically from different cultural backgrounds, concerns, and ideas? One of the city council's goals is to learn and listen to community members' concerns or ideas. What have you done or plan to do to learn and listen to new Ottumwans, specifically from different cultural backgrounds, their concerns and ideas?
I think that's very important to, especially for a city council or any member of the community, rather, to accept all points of view from all demographics and understand that there's different ways to approach things. There's different goals that different people have. I think that's one of the, in my opinion, that's one of the shortfalls that as Ottumwa we see right now today. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we involve taxpayers and we involve all members of our community before we move forward with decisions.
Again, I think that's an excellent question also. And prior to the meeting starting, Mr. Rowe and I were talking a little bit, and I'm trying to learn Spanish, but not very good yet. And then talking with Mr. Crowder, and he can speak Japanese and he can speak Spanish and English and all this stuff. And I think it's important that we try, but then I think it's also important for those cultures to try to work with us. So I want to listen to any and everybody. If I need some help trying to understand, then I would do everything I possibly could to get the help to get to that.
One of the things that I think is really important as we move forward as a community, if we want to encourage growth from a cultural perspective, we need to work with our local businesses to make sure that we're helping them understand the importance of having a wide base of folks working for them. That means going in and if that means offering incentives to get people in their facilities to work. We do that. We work with the community colleges. We work with every venue that we can to help bring more folks into town. Me personally, what I have done, I have sat on the Southern Iowa Immigration Board in the past. I sit with the League of United Latin American Citizens currently, doing volunteer work there where I can. So I think that I have proven that I do try to make sure that everybody is welcome in this community, and we do everything to help them.
Want to thank all the people that came out tonight and submitted questions. That was our last question. Now the council candidates will have 1 minute each to make a closing statement.
Okay. I've lived in Ottumwa in this community for over 40 years now, and it's given me a solid foundation on which to run, I think, for city council again. I'm running for council in order to do my part in the community. I hope to move Ottumwa forward and to have a positive impact both on economic development, streets, sewers, other issues, and the parks. I'm Bob Myers. I'm running for city council. I hope that you will vote for me, or at least get out and vote on November 5th.
You know, I want to make Ottumwa better. All of us here in this room, everybody at home, we all have a vested interest in making Ottumwa better. We can't make Ottumwa better when we rely on rhetoric and we do not look to the future to make things better. We have to, and I know I'm the one that said this last time, we need to look at risk. We cannot be completely risk averse in this community, or we fail to grow and we recede as a community. And again, we have to do that based on fact, and we have to not rely on, well, this is the way that it was, and that's the way that, those were the golden years, and that's what we should go back to. That's not going to help us grow as a community. So thank you for everybody, and I hope to have your support on November 5th.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of time here to share some results. The City of Ottumwa, for those of you in attendance and watching live, if you don't know, they've proudly supported a public engagement survey from Polco, I think since 2017, I believe. I just took that survey. It just come out this week or last week, perhaps. I'm going to share you some questions and results with my minutes of closing here. One question was, do you feel safe in your city? 50% said no. One question was, the condition of your roads, sidewalks, and bridges, are they satisfactory? Over 90% say they're noticeably deteriorating and already in rough shape. Overall appearance of your community, 90% say poor. Does your city keep you informed on important local issues? Over 70% of you say no. Value of properties versus tax paid, 80% say it's a poor value. Do you recommend Ottumwa as a good place to live? Over 65% of the people say no. I want to be a part of something that's going to look forward to a better Ottumwa. I don't have or sit here to pretend to know all the answers, but I'm going to ask the tough questions.
Thank you. We want to thank you for coming. I think we've had some excellent questions from the audience this evening, and I hope other people do take the time to view this on YouTube and hear that. I also want to thank the candidates for giving us some very thoughtful and well-considered ideas on your positions, and hopefully you leave here with a much better set of knowledge about what each candidate represents, and then we simply encourage everybody to get out and vote. So thank you very much. Oh, and I want to, before I'm always forgetting this part. This next Thursday, October 24th, at Evans Junior High, there will be a school board forum. It's caused us to rethink the format of our forum as well as the location. With 15 candidates running, we've had to move to a larger space in order to accommodate that forum. But it's at 7 o'clock. Thursday, October 24th. There will be a notice in the paper as well. You can find that information on the Ottumwa League of Women Voters Facebook page, and we're also trying to spread that out across other social media. But we encourage you to come and to encourage others to come, because whether you have kids in school or not, what happens in our schools really impacts our community. So we hope we see you there and a lot of other people too. Thank you. We'll get it right. We just need representation.